Hello, everyone. It's Shane Conto, your Wasteland reviewer, and welcome to the Wasteland Watchlist. And this is my weekly show where I play some movie roulette and, randomly pick a film from my enormous and obnoxious watch list and then just go with it. And then hopefully you all have a film to go check out and add to your watch list too. And joining me, because not all these episodes will have a guest, is my buddy Luke. Luke, thank you so much for coming on.
Anytime, Shane. Anytime.
Luke, a very valued member of this SPDM crew. And we're here to talk about heavenly creatures. So, a little bit of backstory. We have this film is released in 1994, and two teenage girls share a unique bond. Their parents, concerned that the relationship is too intense, separate them, and the girls take revenge. And oddly enough, this is directed by Peter Jackson, who most people will know from Lord of the Rings and King Kong and the Hobbit movies. But he used to be a Evil Dead style, very schlocky, crazy, dark comedy horror director. And
Yep.
then he made this in 1994, which he co-wrote with Fran Walsh, who been collaborating with for like forever. But some other backstory. This was indeed actually released November 16th, 1994. So we're recording this almost 30 years to the day. We are 1 week off from
Damn
recording this
it.
on its 30th anniversary. Yes, do the math and you can figure out what day we recorded this episode. There is a director's cut, which is in 109 minutes, which I watched the director's cut, I'm pretty sure. So
Okay. Me too.
this this budget had $5 million and it only made 5.4. I feel like this is a hard sell of a movie, but we'll get to that. Like I said, this is directed by Peter Jackson, but what's most interesting is starring Kate Winslet and Melanie Linsky, who obviously, I think it's an understatement to say that Kate Winslet has turned into a star. Because she's one of the most decorated actors of her generation.
Yep.
And once Titanic happened, she became a humongous star. And Melanie Linsky's finally getting some serious attention because I'm basically because of Yellow Jackets. I
Correct.
feel
Yeah.
like is the show that's been really getting her that attention. This is based off of true events, which is wild. The Parker Holme murder case focuses on the relationship between two young women who wind up killing one of their mothers. And this is indeed about murderous young lesbians. Because I love how all the description is the parents think this relationship, and I'm air quoting, is getting too intense. And it's just oh, because they actually are attracted to each other because they are lesbians. Because that happens if you are a lesbian. But this is 1950s. So
Yes.
this was not the same kind of time. This film came out 40 years anniversary basically to the murders, which happened June 22nd, 1954. This debuted at the Venice Film Festival in 94, nominated for Best Original Screenplay. So that's a pretty big deal. Jackson and Fran Walsh wanted to focus on the friendship that went horribly wrong and not the investigation that happened after. Shot on Christ Church where the girls went. So they actually went to the real school and shot those scenes and stuff like that, which is interesting. And there's a lot of special effects in this, which is crazy. And this was all done by the newly created Weta,
Mm.
which obviously has become one of the most important special effects houses in the world, named after a really, 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 really creepy bug. Because my wife, Jess, who Luke has interviewed for his show, will appreciate, she specifically was like, have you seen how weird the bug is that it's named after? And I'm like, you're going to show me, aren't you? And she did, and it is a creepy bug. But Luke, what are your general thoughts on heavenly creatures?
So I thought it was pretty good. I had some gripes. I don't think I was mentally in a space where I could appreciate fully this movie. And also the fact I didn't actually know this was based on a true story until the very end credits. And I'm like, oh Jesus fuck. Oh really? So this is
I'm just like,
interesting.
what?
Murderers, lesbians in the 1950s in New Zealand. Color me surprised. Like,
Yep.
no, it's I think this is definitely like a mood movie, right? You need to
Mhm.
be in a certain mood to watch it. It's not anything you just put on. And I therefore blame myself. I don't think I was in a headspace to watch it, but I had to watch it for this, recording. So I think I liked it enough to say like I think it's actually pretty good. I think we kind of buried the lead. Both Kate Winslet and Melanie Linsky have the introducing credit. This is their
Yes.
first feature, like so
Yes.
this is insane that like two queens, obviously Kate Winslet, but yeah, as you pointed out, Melanie Linsky for Yellow Jacket fans, like I'm myself, am one. She is phenomenal in that show, and she finally is getting her flowers.
Mhm.
That show is great, by the way. This movie, it's weird, but it's quirky, and I think if you are a questioning, like, because like we say, like, oh, murderers, lesbians, they might be bi for all we know, because here's the thing, right? They are very young girls, they are just experimenting, they see what happens, they are attracted to each other, but everything's being repressed, so
Yep.
not really, you know they don't really have the space to experiment, they don't really have the opportunity to actually do it properly, quote unquote. So, you know, and apparently this case is a big deal in New Zealand,
Yes.
and that's why Peter Jackson took it from, you know what, let's not make it about the murder. Let's focus on their relationship, on that fantasy element, and how how both the like had this very heightened relationship.
Mhm. Well, and I especially you pointing out the introducing aspect. So Kate
Hmm.
Winslet went through a very lengthy process trying to cast Juliet, and she's an English actor
Yes,
and came down to New Zealand. But like Melanie Linsky, which will probably surprise a lot of people, is actually a Kiwi.
correct.
So like, which if you just watched Yellow Jackets or like mostly anything else that she's been in, you'll be like, what, what?
And
It's
then
on
you
the
watch like
same.
interviews with her, and where she uses her actual accent. It's so funny.
I think it's on the same level as Tony Collette, where you would never guess that she's actually Australian. You're just like, what?
Hmm.
And but being able to see, and that's the thing too, like these were two young women repressed a
Yes.
lot. And unfortunately, a lot of that repression morphed into breaks with reality and this fantastic because they're both very creative in what they were doing together. And that's where the Weta comes in. I was not expecting
Same.
that aspect of the film, and the special effects are incredible. And you're just like, this is wild. And that's such an interesting, fantastical element that gets added into the film. And like, it's not this film's not a fantasy because like it's very clear all this stuff is in their head and
Yes.
they're just very creative young women, and the important thing to point out is they went to jail, so like they were imprisoned for a
But only
while.
for a couple of like years. Like if you actually read on in the thingy in the closing credits, what I'm like, wait, so they murdered the mom, right? One of their
Yep.
moms, but and like it happened in 54, but like one of them go down with like 57 or 58. I'm like, wait, for a murder? The fuck? I'm like, yeah, I understand they were
Well,
young
they
and
were
all that.
minors.
No, I do understand that fact, but it's still, that feels low. I don't know what the
well
number for murder should be, but it feels low.
well, Luke, remember this is not American prison
That is
system
true.
where you get thrown in and locked and throw away the key. uh Imprisonment's supposed to be about rehabilitation.
Yes.
You know, but whatever. That's a whole other conversation. But the idea of like they were never together ever again
And
after
one of
this
them is
was
still
interesting.
alive. One of them, like apparently from what I've learned on another podcast, is one of the first one died only last year. So, and the second one is 86 and still alive in someplace in England, so very close to my where I live. So I better
Well,
be on the lookout.
what's interesting is like when this film came out, it's like, and they're still alive. And like, well,
Hmm.
yeah, like it's only 40 years later, and they were like teens. So like they're in their 50s, but
Yes.
now this movie's 30 years old, and you're like, they're in their 80s. So that gives a little bit of different perspective. But the performances between the two of them are incredible.
Mm-hmm.
They really deliver. And much of the rest of the cast are character actors. Like these are not, they didn't get any like big names, or at least
No.
international big
Mm-hmm.
names. They might be some of the other actors that play the parents and such might be bigger actors in New Zealand, but I didn't really recognize any of them. But they think they all do a really fine job in terms of portraying who they're supposed to be,
Mm-hmm.
and you need that to work. I will say, and I did watch the director's cut. Now I'm interested to watch the theatrical cut because one of my biggest complaints about this movie is like I felt like it got long in the tooth at
Yes.
one point where I'm just like, we get it.
Mm-hmm.
Get us there. I think we're ready. I think it's time to wrap things up. And maybe that extra like 10, 15 minutes would make a difference if it was lean, a
Yeah.
little bit leaner. But that was probably my biggest complaint was the transition from the second to the third act really slowed down at points. But I buy their relationship. I think it's an incredibly creative film. It's a really well made film.
Mm-hmm.
Peter Jackson obviously is an extremely talented director,
Mm-hmm.
and he has a lot of range because doing stuff like Brain Dead
Yeah.
and then doing Lord of the Rings and then making World War I documentaries that are incredible and then documentaries about the Beatles and stuff like that. He could do a lot of different kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is a fascinating film that I'm so glad that I watched because it's so interesting that a film like this exists.
Yes, it is. And like to me, like I think you hit it on the nail. It's like exactly on the head. It's basically like, it's all, not even 2 hours, but it feels longer. And definitely there are parts of it that is like I get it. Like, like I've understood that this relationship is becoming very unhealthy. And not because they are lesbians, it's because they are very obsessed with each other to a point
Yes.
where, they are codependent of each other, right? So I get it. I think and I think that's why even some of the fantasy sequences, I'm like, cool visuals, especially for the time, very cool visuals.
Yeah.
Did we need all of them? Maybe not, but hey, what I also would like to point out, not only they shot, at the school and at the coffee shop where the actual thing that took place, they went to the place where the murder took place, and they wanted to shoot this scene there. But apparently, based on IMDb's trivia, it was so creepily eerie, and like there was no birds or nothing. They actually were like, you know what, fuck this, let's move like a couple of like feet, like a couple of meters down there, because this is a bit too creepy even for us.
Well,
So,
how the scene plays out is
mm-hmm,
like you're building up to this.
mm-hmm,
Because like from like the opening of the film, like
yes,
this is where this is going.
yeah,
And we finally get there. And this film is like this isn't just like some kind of straightforward biopic. There's some really uncomfortable elements.
mm-hmm,
Obviously, you have the repression of these two young lesbians, but the idea of these two women being so obsessive about each other. And
mm-hmm,
they're young women who are repressed and probably have never gotten a really mature conversation with them
mm-hmm,
about, you know, sex
yes,
or connection and love. And they don't know how to deal with it. And then you have the moments with like the one boarder getting in bed
mm-hmm,
with Pauline and stuff like that. And you're just like, what the shit's going on watching this movie? And it's so just like first, it's so perverse and disgusting, like this older guy wanting to get in bed with this younger woman, but then the whole victim blaming of basically Pauline's a whore because some guy came into her room and got in bed with her and stuff like
mm-hmm,
that. And
mm-hmm,
how her parents treat her. And like this pushes some uncomfortable buttons.
mm-hmm,
And it needs to because this kind of stuff happens a lot, and especially in that time period where this is the problem where if you don't educate young people about, there's different types of people in this world, you might think that something is horribly wrong about you, and this is the exact kind of story where that kind of thing goes wrong.
Yep.
And it hits so powerfully. And obviously this is an extreme example. Like, not every young queer person is going to grow up and then murder their parents because they repressed them.
But they will
But
despise them most of the time if
yes.
if they are especially not welcoming, or if they
Mhm.
tell them like oh you're wrong for doing so. And like that's why sexual education is very important. So not only for young people to understand their emotions, but to also to understand that hey, what this older person is trying to do to me is not right. Like when you mentioned the scene with the guy and getting into the bed with her, I'm like, yeah, that's not right. And then when she even says to her mom, like her mom is going at her, and then she's like, didn't you marry daddy when you were 17? And I'm like, damn, girl, it runs in the family, but again, those were the times. Those, you were
Yeah.
a bit too young to get married, but you gotten married because there's a boy who gotten you pregnant at a very early age. So you know what? Let's get you guys married. Those were the times.
You have like a 34-year-old with a 17-year-old child, and you're just like,
Why are you describing Gilmore Girls?
true. That
Yeah,
is that is indeed the plot of Gilmore Girls.
yeah.
And or like I watched a lot of Grounded for Life. I
Mm,
don't know if you've ever heard of that sitcom with Donald
nope.
Logan in it, but like it's a couple like 35-year-olds who have like teen children because and then the grandpa's like 50 some. Like,
Yeah, and
yeah,
you start to
50,
do the math.
and
It's
he's
like,
like 50 some, like probably late 50s maybe, and it's just like, why do I have teenage grandchildren at this point? Because
mm-hmm.
stuff
Yep,
happens.
exactly.
That math checks out. Math checks out sometimes like that. And this is such a fascinating film, and I'm looking forward to, because like I've watched Brain Dead.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't met I watched Meet the Feebles or Bad Taste or anything like that. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested to look at more of Peter Jackson's earlier stuff, because basically Peter Jackson for me started at Lord of the Rings
Of course.
and has mostly gone down from there. It's like, I do still really appreciate his King Kong movie, even if it probably could have been tighter.
Yeah.
Um, and I have a lot of feelings about the Hobbit movies.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of feelings, which we won't get into because that's a whole entire other podcast. But look, I guess, do you have anything else that you wanted to add about Heavenly Creatures?
I think that's pretty much it. Like again, like yes, it's a Peter Jackson. I think this is the most accessible he's been up until that point, right?
Yes,
For
100%.
general audiences, right? Because again, he was kind of like new. Wait, is he Kiwi? Is
Yes.
he? Yes. So he was a Kiwi version of Sam Raimi. Like he genuinely was like like
Realistically,
making
yes.
low budget horror movies with like and this is him first time trying to be a bit more mainstream. And
Yep.
I wish studios still made those choices where you know what, these like quirky directors, let's give them a franchise and see what happens. It might not work out as well as in this case where you get Lord of the Rings, but hey, you never know.
Which I want to check this because $5 million
Hmm.
in 1994.
Probably was like 10, 12 now, I would imagine.
It's about 10 and a half.
Yeah.
So I I would love to see more filmmakers who make like indie type films to have the space to be handed like a $10 million budget and see what
Yes.
happens,
Hmm.
instead of, you made some really great indie films. Here's $250 million and go at it. But the quote unquote middle class of filmmaking is dying,
Yes.
so you're not going to see a whole lot of which also $10 million is still like indie level
No,
budget
nowadays, I was gonna say,
nowadays.
it's like it's nothing. Like, like,
Yeah,
and that's I've always said this. We don't need more $250 million movies. We need more 10 movies that cost 20 million. Like, instead of making one 200, 250, $300 million movie with a bunch of A-listers and CGI and all that. No, let's make 10, 20, 30 million movies, maybe 15, maybe, and just let's see what happens. And like what he did, pick two great actresses, young actresses, introducing,
yeah,
because like talk about his luck. Like he stumbled upon Kate Winslet and Melanie Linsky. Like this is fucking insane to me. Like
yeah.
respect.
Respect. But yeah, this is an interesting film and definitely worth checking out. It's a crazy true story with a lot of interesting themes as well, and very creative. But at the end of the day, thank you, Luke, for coming on and chatting movies with me.
Anytime, Shane.
And thank all of you for listening. Make sure to go ahead and like, comment, and share on this episode. What are your thoughts on Peter Jackson's filmography? Have you checked out some of his earlier, like really crazy, over the top, gory horror comedies and stuff like that? Make sure to follow or subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast. Luke has a great show, Flicks and Chill, and we have plenty of other great shows on the SPM Crew Podcasting Network, ranging from movies to television to physical media to comics to music to sports and all kinds of other things. So go check it out. And if you like our logo, Joseph loved the HiFlyer Creative. If you're in need, go check them out. But thank you as always for tuning in and supporting the Wasteland Watchlist here on the SPM Crew Podcasting Network.